Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Well, welcome to So Many Books, So Little Time. This is show 25, Zina, our
All right.
silver
What anniversary is that, silver?
My name is Joe Nash, and I'm here with Zina Shevchik. We are both librarians here at the Colonie Library. The premise of our show is very simple. Zina and I go down to the new bookshelf and to our technical services department where we're processing all the new books. And we're going to tell you about a whole bunch of new books. So Zina, as usual, will go first.
Okay. I like to pick out things that I don't know anything about or that are very new to me. And we don't cover a lot of fiction, but I am an avid mystery reader. So this book caught my attention, and it's actually, I'm surprised I didn't come across it sooner. This one is called Slash and Burn, a Dr. Siri, S-I-R-I, mystery by Colin Cotterill. Now this is supposedly the last in an 8-book series of mysteries with this particular character, Dr. Siri, who is the national coroner of Laos. And it's set in the late 1970s, this book is. So I assume the earlier books were in the, before that, before 1978. It gets super reviews. The library has the previous 7 books in this series as well, and it's, as I said, it's classified as a mystery. So the New York Times Book Review calls it a fresh and exotic mystery, and it is exotic because it's set in Laos. And it caught my attention because this main character, as a national coroner of Laos, is ready to retire, but he gets called in for one last case, and it concerns a missing in action American, an airplane pilot or fighter pilot during the Vietnam War, and they've just found some remains of a man in the jungle, and he's being asked, Dr. Siri is being asked to investigate whether these remains are those of a missing MIA American soldier. It's funny, it's irreverent, it talks about a culture I know nothing about, but it also talks about events that I'm familiar with in my own personal history, because I was in college during the Vietnam War, and I have friends who actually fought in the Vietnam War. So that's why I was trying it. And I just read the first couple of chapters. As I said, it's funny, it's engaging, it's very different. I would never have thought that I would be interested in something that was set in Asia. It's because it's very different. I like to stick very often with things in my comfort zone. This author, he actually lives in Thailand. So he's very knowledgeable about Asia. So I highly recommend it for something different. Slash and Burn, Colin Cotterill.
Okay, those books are always well received, that series. Now, Zina, I have a question for you before I start.
Okay.
I'm noticing in my books here that I'm going to talk about, I didn't notice this till a minute ago, I have an inordinate number of biographies. Now, because I like to read biographies, I know you do. Why do you think we like to read biographies so much? I don't mean you and me, I mean people in general. We keep statistics for circulation in the library, and the biographies are always very highly, it's the highest circulating category we have for nonfiction.
Well, I always like to see where people come from, like where they start from, what in their life made them different or propel them toward a certain area. So.
And I think also another thing about biographies, you can find out a lot about the times of the person.
It's a history, right.
So I mentioned this book last time near the end because I didn't have time, so I thought I'd just go back to it. because I'm almost done with it. I'm not finished, but I'm almost at the end. But it's so good. It's a book where you can find out a lot about the person and the times. H.G. Wells, Another Kind of Life, Michael Sherborne, who's English. He's written several books about H.G. Wells' work. So this is a biography. I got to say, absolutely fascinating. Even if you don't like science fiction or H.G. Wells, he was involved in so much. I think I mentioned last time he was in the Fabians. He was a socialist. He took stands on all kinds of stuff. A lot of times they were contradictory. He wrote, I think, over 100 books, pamphlets. He wrote the famous Outline of History, the 2 volumes. He was just involved, and he had all these affairs with all these different women, including Rebecca West, the famous.
Oh, all right.
He was all over the place, and he lived from 1866 to 1946. So he spanned Victorian era to the end of World War II. A lot of his writings were very prophetic, if that's not the right word, prophetic.
That's right.
He wrote stories about submarines, nuclear bombs, way before he started science fiction. Back then it was called scientific romances. He was, his output of writing was amazing. But this book tells you about his life, his inner life. He was very poor when he grew up. He came from nothing. I think that always bugged him, and he became absolutely world famous. At one time, he was the most famous writer in the world, and he did have some wacky ideas. But anyway, I gotta say, this book is really interesting. H.G. Wells, Another Kind of Life by Michael Sherborne.
He looks sane.
Well, he's really young here, but it's very, very good. He was involved in so much.
So do you think that poverty spurs creativity?
I think in him it did, yes. He's sort of, it's very interesting. That's why I think we like biographies.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So anyway, H.G. Wells.
All right, this is a history, that's not it's a biography of the world. A History of the World in 100 Objects by Neil MacGregor, the director of the British Museum. It says, from the hand axe to the credit card. Now, I actually don't travel very much, but a year and a half ago, I was in London, and we were at the British Museum, and they actually had this exhibit, which this book is based on. I think that the exhibit actually started from a series of BBC radio broadcasts called A History of the World in 100 Objects, where they, several times a week, they did some profiles of some of the pieces in the British Museum. And they were such a hit that I think that's when they set up the display in the British Museum. So I was fascinated by it in the British Museum a year and a half ago when they were, just right after we left, they were going to unveil the 100th object of the history of the world, which was something current. And I'm not going to tell you something in contemporary life, and I'm not going to tell you what that 100th object is, but maybe you could guess while I'm talking.
What, the credit card?
That was the 99th.
All right.
That was the 99th object. This, it's a wide range of material. One thing that got my attention was a Victorian tea set, a Scottish, in the 1800s, a Scottish chess pieces from much longer ago than that was actually belonged to a Norwegian. And what's fascinating is they talk about the material that these objects were made out of, what its use, its function, and what it said about the social history as well as the political or military history, so it's more about, it's not just about the political and political history. It's about social history. And the pictures are great. And this is how I like to learn my history. There's like 4, 5, 6 pages for each object, and they have beautiful pictures, beautiful photography. Let's see if I can.
But they're from all around the world.
Their premise was, right, one of the premises of the display was that it would be from all around the world, every part of history.
Periods.
Yes, okay. The oldest, the first object and the oldest is from 2 billion years ago, and it's a tool, a shopping tool. But it has some of the typical things you would expect. The Rosetta Stone is in the British Museum. A map that was on deer skin from North America during the time of just before the French and Indian War, that had some some trails on it. But there are some very unusual things in here too. So I highly recommend it. I mean, it's a big book, but it's split up in chronological order, but within each time period there is a theme as well. One theme is just status symbols, another is the beginnings of science and literature, another one is the inside the palace, secrets at court. So the first global economy. You know, there's the requisite number pieces of the coins and pottery, but there's all sorts of unusual things that you wouldn't.
But it's the history of the world in 100 objects.
Yes, and it's from all over the world.
All right. Is there a McDonald's hamburger in there?
No.
Wait, let me guess the last object. Was it an iPod?
Why would I tell you? No. I'm not going to tell you. I want people to look at it. You look at it later.
All right, I'm going to have to keep going with this biography binge here I'm on. Number one, because I really like this person. It's an autobiography. Number two, it received really good reviews, above average for a celebrity. A lot of times celebrity biographies or autobiographies are sometimes not even written by the person, but they don't, I can't say there's been too many celebrity biographies that get good reviews. This one got excellent reviews, mainly because, I'll tell you who it is about. It is called Drama, An Actor's Education by John Lithgow, the actor John Lithgow.
Yes.
I'm only going by the reviews. It's a book I'm definitely going to read because I really like him a lot. And the book is
He has quite a sense of humor.
Yes, he's a comedic actor, but he started in theater. He's done a lot of drama. He's played some sort of psychotic type people, but he's done everything. But the book is sort of a love letter to both theater and his father, who was a Shakespearean, I think, actor, and they did plays. He never really became, I don't want to say famous. His father never really achieved anything close to him. But he really loved his father, and the whole book is sort of an homage to theater, the way he came up before he was in movies and TV, and he's back in theater now, I think, and occasionally you see him. But a lot of the reviews, the thing people like about this book from the reviewers is that he's very, very honest about a lot of his own faults and failings and his successes and what it's like to be famous and this and that. I think he got divorced. He talks about the failure of that and this celebrity lifestyle. And apparently he's very, very honest in this. And then he got married again. I think he's been married for like 35 years or something. But all the reviews said it was really good. And if you like John Lithgow, it's you'll probably like the book. I'm going to be reading it soon because I got too much other things to read.
Well, it's probably the history of the theater as well as Hollywood.
Yes, and he was in the theater. He's probably a little bit older than me. He was in the theater in the 60s and 70s when a lot of things were changing and movies became, popular. And he was on, of course, everyone knows who he is. So anyway, a book that's been getting great reviews. And apparently he's a really good guy, nice guy from what you read. He's not a,
arrogant
snob. Apparently not, but Drama, An Actor's Education by John Lithgow.
Okay, now is he American? He's English.
He's from the United States.
He is from the United States. Okay, and his father was a Shakespearean actor in the United States.
I forgot where they lived. I don't know. I don't want to say Midwest, but I'm not sure. But he ran these theatrical companies, and he grew up in that. Yeah, stuff like that.
See, I was going to try to. The reason I'm asking, I was trying to make a connection to my next book, which is about is English all the way through. Well, not all the way through. This book is a companion book to a just finished PBS series called Downton Abbey. And it's similar, the series, there's been 2 series shown so far, and apparently there's a new one being produced and filmed right now in England because it's been such a huge success. This is why I'm such a big proponent of PBS, Public Broadcasting System, because it brings this incredible material to everyone. Obviously, you don't pay for access to PBS, and yet this is just high quality material that's being presented. So this is everything you ever wanted to know about the background to the world that's presented on PBS series called Downton Abbey. It's a picture book. It's extraordinarily, of course, I open a page to no pictures, but it's got these beautiful pictures of the fashion of the times, the house, which is a character obviously in the book, which is filmed in an actual mansion called Herclerc, Herclerc, in Britain, in the middle of England, excuse me, not Britain. And the Downton Abbey is set between 1912 and 1920. I gather the third series is going to be in the 1920s, and it's about the family, the Crawleys, whose family has owned this mansion and estate, not just a castle and a mansion, but the estate, which has many, many workers on it. And it follows the lives of both the upstairs family, the rich people, and the servants downstairs. PBS, my watching of PBS started in the 1970s with the series called Upstairs Downstairs, which actually chronicled the much of the same period. This is filmed very differently. It's created in short vignettes. It covers 18 main characters, and the story goes through from the sinking of the Titanic through World War I. It talks about the effect of war on society. It talks about the effect of the 1918 flu epidemic. It covers the suffragettes in Britain, but it's all told in a wonderful way, and this book just goes more into the social history as well as the political history of that time, and the actors are discussed. I mean, the actors present information about themselves and the filming of the series and the characters, and I just fell in love with it, and just want everyone to know, who was also a fan of Downton Abbey and PBS, that we have a companion book.
Very good. There's nothing hotter these days than Downton Abbey.
Yes.
In fact, there was recently a cartoon in the New Yorker. It showed a woman standing like at a crossroads. It was like a T, and there was a road sign with two arrows. And one said Jersey Shore, one said Downton Abbey.
Really? That's funny.
So if you can make it to a New Yorker cartoon, you know you're in the...
We do have the DVDs too, I believe. I don't know if they're
Season
cataloged.
1 and 2.
I don't know if they're in the collection yet, but you can put reserves on them.
Well, this being an election year, I have two political books here that people may be interested in. I guess they're kind of biographies in a way, even though the theme here. This book, again, I've been reading some good reviews on, and it's a very interesting take on American presidential elections. This book is called Almost President. The men who lost the race but changed the nation. These are portraits of people who lost the presidential candidate. Not every single one, of course, but very important ones that even though they lost, like he says, changed the nation in some way. So this book profiles, and it gives reasons for this, why they were important political figures even though they lost. Then it goes back to the beginnings. Henry Clay, Stephen Douglas, William Jennings Bryan, Al Smith, Thomas Dewey, Adlai Stevenson, Barry Goldwater, George McGovern, Ross Perot. There's a big chapter on Ross Perot, how he changed the
conversation.
The modern
changes the conversation.
Al Gore, John Kerry, and John McCain. And I'll read one real brief thing, because this I think explains. This will give you the gist of the book and why the people I just mentioned are in here. These men have had a far greater impact on American history than many of those who actually became president. They created, transformed, and realigned our political parties. They broke barriers and taboos around religion and gender. ushered in new political movements, introduced sweeping policy changes that would in time become the law of the land and change our expectations of political candidates. And Theodore White, who wrote 5 books about 5 different campaigns, said again and again in American history it has happened that the losers of the presidency contributed almost as much to the permanent tone and dialogue of politics as did the winners. So this book looks really interesting.
In a presidential year.
In a presidential year.
Election year.
And I have a book that goes along with this, because this book came out, when did this book just came out? But for some reason, this person I'm going to now mention is not included. But I can predict, I can tell you now that in 2012, he will not win. But I think he's someone whose ideas is changing. I don't know if they're changing debate completely, but his ideas are being incorporated into a lot of things going on. That's Ron Paul.
Well, he's been running for a long, long time.
He's been running for a long time.
He's been in the news.
So a lot of his ideas, I think, I'm sure 20 or 50 years from now, they'll say, well, Ron Paul never won, but he really contributed significantly. And this is a quick book that he wrote, not a quick book. It's a book with quick little chapters on all different topics. It's called Liberty Defined, 50 Essential Issues That Affect Our Freedom by Ron Paul. I mean, I think it's safe to say he's not going to win, isn't it?
I think so.
So it's arranged alphabetically, abortion to Zionism. It's got, and he has little 4 or 5 page essays from a libertarian point of view on such things as, I won't read them all, but just give you an idea, and if you're interested in Ron Paul's thinking, abortion, assassination, bipartisanship, civil disobedience, democracy, discrimination, trade policies, torture, lobbying, marriage, medical care, global warming. So you get the idea. And it's all from a libertarian. And I can say Ron Paul, I think he has been contributing to this campaign. So.
Well, there's a lot of young people on college campuses and who will follow him, and that's
he probably
an
has,
education in and of itself.
He probably has the young
Yes, he does.
A lot.
But that's
so 2 books for our campaign season: Almost President, The Men Who Lost the Race But Changed the Nation, Liberty Defined, 50 Essential Issues That Affect Our Freedom by Ron Paul. Now, if he wins, we have to re-edit this.
Well, I think he inspires people
Yes.
to become part of the political discussion, and I mean that's important.
Well, that's what this other book's about. All these other people I named in the beginning, their contributions really added to to subsequent years in our national debates.
Right, exactly. So I'm going to follow with a work of fiction, but it's a work of political fiction. It's kind of political satire. It's called Taft, 2012. The premise is rather outrageous. The author is Jason Heller. He doesn't happen to be. He's not related to the other Heller, is he? I didn't see anything.
He didn't have a son.
Okay.
I don't think.
It's a small book. It's not that long. There's lots of white spaces, and it is very funny. It supposedly has relevance this year because of being a presidential election year. Its premise is that William Howard Taft is more or less resurrected in 2012 from being lost. And he kind of interjects himself, other people interject him into the presidential race in 2012. And this book, it sounds ridiculous, but it actually works as a piece of nonfiction, and it also has some historical value. It sure did make me go to the internet and the web and find out more about William Howard Taft and what his politics were. And I learned a lot about his association with Theodore Roosevelt and about how Theodore Roosevelt developed the third party during the election, I want to say 1918, it might be 1917, to challenge Taft. So they were political buddies in the early 1900s, and then Taft, once he became president, went in different directions than Theodore Roosevelt thought he should, and President Theodore Roosevelt developed a third party. And so that's one of its bits of relevance to the presidential race of 2012. It's told in a variety of ways. It's not just straight narrative. It's told by, it's interspersed with supposedly news articles, some CIA or FBI memorandum, some interviews, transcripts of interviews in the media between some characters in this book and well-known media people. And it's very funny. I've only read the first few chapters, and they're very short, and it's very easy to read, and I guess it's gotten really good reviews and a lot of notice. So just for something different, fiction, Taft, 2012, a novel by Jason Heller.
All right, I read a couple reviews of that, said it was very funny.
It is.
About,
It is.
William Howard Taft running, they get him to run, and don't they have him texting and stuff?
All sorts of
Okay.
things.
Okay.
His adjustment to 2012 from.
It's funny.
Now I learned about. See, this is these things I didn't know. He never wanted to be president. He was urged to run for president by Roosevelt. His goal in life was to be a Supreme Court justice, and he thought he was doing the party a favor. But I mean, it was fascinating.
Well, I too, in a rarity for me, also, I have a work of fiction here. I don't have the book though. I have the audio, but I'll show it. This book is currently on the bestseller list, I'm pretty sure. It won the Booker Prize in England. It's the most prestigious award in England. I think it's the equivalent of the National Book Award. I don't think it's just for English authors though. They recently changed the name. It's now called the Man Booker Prize. It's a very short book, but it won the prize. It's by Julian Barnes, pretty famous author. It's called The Sense of an Ending. I don't know if you can see that. Well, anyway, it's on the bestseller list. It won the Man Booker Prize. It's about a guy in his maybe, they say late middle ages. I don't know. I think he's in his early 60s. And
He's middle-aged. It's not during the middle ages.
No, it's a modern novel.
Okay.
So, and he's thinking back on his life and some of his friends he knew in school and college, and how certain events had happened, love triangle, etc., and what went on then as opposed to his life now. But the book, I'm only halfway through it, but it's great. It's really good. I can see why it won the prize, but it's all about memory and history and how we remember things, how the same, not the same, what am I trying to say? How a group of people can remember the same event differently. In this case, there's, well, I won't give it away, but it's all about memory and history and like I say, how you remember things, why you remember things, and this and that,
So it's fiction.
It's a novel, and it's told by a guy looking back on this. It's really good. So, The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes.
Okay. Just because I want to cover this book and I don't know how much time we have left, I'm going to bring up this book called Girl Land, G-I-R-L, Land, by Caitlin Flanagan, where you're having a speaker.
Yeah, I'll mention that one.
Okay, all right. The critics of this book, it's nonfiction, the critics of this book insist that it's an essay and commentary rather than a book based on research and evidence to back up this author's points of view. She apparently writes quite a bit. Now I've just lost let me see.
It's right for the Atlantic.
The Atlantic. Okay, it is the Atlantic. And she's controversial because some people are calling her an anti-feminist. Some of her writings suggest that women should enjoy being domestic more than they do. That kind of thing. The feminists are not happy with a lot of things that she's written in the past in the magazine Atlantic. And she has written a previous book too, which again celebrated things domestic for women. This book is more of she's talking about how parents should protect girls as they're growing up. their emotional lives, that girls in the transition from girl to womanhood need some time and space to make that transition, and that they're not getting it, and that they're being bombarded with pornographic images, ridiculous expectations of women, a lot of which I agree with. My children, my girls, are 23, and I am grateful that I didn't have to bring them up in the Facebook, texting, Twitter environment completely. It was just starting when my girls were in high school, and I do agree with a lot of what she says, but she kind of suggests that, you know, she has 2 sons, and in the book she says that she doesn't have to worry about these kinds of things because she has 2 sons. And my attitude as a mother of girls and a feminist is that the mothers of sons are the parents of sons are the people who should be teaching their sons to be more respectful of women. So there's a lot of controversy about what she writes. I don't disagree with a lot that she writes in this book, but it is, and it's presented in a pretty easy reading. It's not difficult to read. But I do agree with a lot of the critics in that she doesn't, a lot of it's an essay on what her thoughts and feelings and her background is and her experience, and less based on fact and evidence, I would say. Now, Joe, you can talk about what's
Yeah, I'll mention a few
up.
things. You know how when you read a bad review of a book, or a negative review, and we've all read them, I mean, that book, Girl Land, is going to be the subject of our noon book review here in the library on April 19th. It's a Thursday. That book got some nasty reviews.
Well, I
not
can,
just bad. Here's an excerpt from one. Just give you an idea. It got a couple good ones, but most of the reaction to that book has been a bit on the negative side for the reasons you said, even though a lot of people agree with what she's saying. Here's just one sentence from one of the reviews. Lamenting the hard lives of young girls, Caitlin Flanagan ends up in a dream world all her own. So that's the flavor of some of the.
Yeah, I think it's harsh. I mean, I think it's that a lot of the criticism is harsh. There's lots of good things. I do think it's a different world these days, but I do think that generally women, girls, have a tough time.
Well, our noon book review on April 19th will be that book, Girl Land, and our reviewer, her name is Lisa Witkowski. This will be her 4th time here, but she's taken on these controversial books because when she did our noon book reviews before, she did the book Girls Gone Mild, the
Tiger Mother one?
What was the Revenge of the Tiger Mother?
I can't remember what it is.
And she did, I can't think of the other one she did. Oh, Bad Mother by Ayelet Waldman. And these were all books that, you know, when they come out, you know, the blogosphere explodes and people go insane. But Lisa is very level-headed and insightful, and she will give a good review of that book.
It's hard to be a parent, that's all I'll say.
Yes.
And this is kind of admonishing parents to pay more attention.
Okay. Well, I'm going to mention a couple other things. We obviously are out of time. I can't get to all my other biographies here. So many books, so little time. So that was the 19th I just mentioned. Really quickly, our noon book review is going to be another one. I'm sorry, not a noon book review, an author talk on Thursday, April 26th. The author of this book is going to be here. It's called A Guide to Buying Farm Fresh in the Capital District. The subtitle is Living Well and Safely in Upstate New York. But it's all about the Capital District regions, farmers markets and things like that. The author herself will be here. Her name is Julie Cushine Rigg. That's Thursday, April 26th here in the library. Starts at 12:15. One more item. On Thursday night, April 26th, the same night as that, Ray Misowitz is going to be here. He has a lot of different programs on nuclear submarines. I think he's got 10 or 15 different programs he does, like, you know, a year on a nuclear sub, or some of the famous rescues in the late 50s. Well, anyway, he has a brand new program. He does a slideshow and he talks, gives a little lecture, and he worked in GE on the nuclear sub, so he's very knowledgeable, nice guy. This one's going to be on Admiral Hyman Rickover, who started the nuclear sub program, and it's about his whole life, from his He was an immigrant. I didn't know that, and he became very important. If I say Admiral Rickover, most people know that. So, you probably heard of Admiral Rickover.
Yes, I have.
And finally, this is not. We talk about new books here in the library, but once a month in our library, we get this newspaper. It's probably the same size as Metroland. It's called Book Page. They're on the front desk, or when you walk in, the front table. We get a whole box of them every month, and it's all little short reviews of all new books, kind of like our show, but they get to more than you and I get to. But it's great reviews and interviews, a lot of ads for books, and we, like I say, it comes out every month, and just come in and pick one up if you want to read about them. They're usually gone by the 5th of the month, though, so you got to get here in the beginning of the month. So, anything else, Zina?
I have lots of books, but we're probably out of time.
We'll have to save them for next time.
Okay.
So that's it for So Many Books, So Little Time, show 25, and we'll see you next time.